I am Megan and welcome to Battle Royale with Cheese, the website you can get all of your TV and film news, reviews and trailers, and I have watched the first 2 episodes of AlienEarth. I apologise this is out a few days later after the release of those episodes. The UK has just had a massive heat wave and it's been way too humid in this room to actually record, so I do apologise for that. But I have finally watched it. I've been so excited for this. AlienEarth serves as a prequel series. When a space vessel crash lands on Earth, a group of soldiers and synthetics are sent over for a search and rescue, and they come face to face with the planet's greatest threat. Just before I start the review, I just want to say that I am just going to be talking about my overall thoughts on both episodes. So these videos, because I am going to be doing a series on this, on the whole series itself, I'm probably going to be talking about spoilers, so I apologise in advance. If there's something that I mention that is spoilerish, then I apologise. But yeah, I'll put that in the title and in the description, the video description down below as well, just so you guys know beforehand. So yeah, this is the first ever Alien TV series, and yeah, I've been really excited for this. I'm a really big fan of the Alien series. I think the design of the Xenomorph is really cool. I think it's one of my favourite movie monsters ever. And yeah, the original film is fantastic. And I really like the first 2 episodes. I think the first episode is quite slow, but it serves as like a world building. In this timeline, this is, like I said, set before the original Alien film. I'll get back onto that near the end of the video actually. But because this is set before everything else, the Earth at this point is governed by a few companies instead of just a couple. And the main ones is Prodigy and Wayland, which we are all too familiar with. Prodigy is a new company created by the world's youngest trillionaire. And I think that's really interesting. In episode 2 there's definitely some political tensions that come up, which I'll talk about in a minute. But I think the world building so far is really interesting. We get to know how this Earth works, as well as meeting the crew at the beginning of episode 1 who are on this space vessel. You find out that it's a research vessel and doing experiments on the facehuggers, on the xenomorphs, on these other creatures. You see them more in episode 2. There's some really weird designs, really amazing designs, but very strange designs. And yeah, it crash lands. Deliberately you find out it crash lands. And yeah, things kind of go from there. So yeah, I really like the world building in this. I think that's really interesting. The cinematography is very interesting as well. And what I really like about this show is that it's very perfectly captured the sound, the cinematography, the visuals of the original film. And they've got that perfect. Especially in episode 2, there's a lot of shots where you're focused on a character, but something is happening in the background, where unless you veer off and look at it, you won't notice it. And I think that's really cool. It happens a lot more in episode 2 than episode 1, but I really like the cinematography. Flashbacks are done really interestingly as well. I know there's a bit of a meme going around at the moment of a picture of Wendy, who is the main character, and the shot is of her and a semi-transparent image of Sid the Sloth sort of halfway across her face, from Sid the Sloth from Ice Age. There is context and a reason for that those films were a way for her to connect with her brother. There is a reason for it, but I think it's quite funny that has kind of gone quite viral. But on that point, these are how the flashbacks are done. This is how they're shot. You'll have a semi-transparent image where it's sort of shown halfway across the face, and I think that is really unique. It's really, really interesting, and I really like it. And I also really like the cast. So Sydney Chandler plays Wendy. So Wendy is a synthetic, and they explain this at the very beginning of the show. There's different types of artificial intelligence. So you have the basic artificial intelligence, you have the cyborgs, and you have the synthetics. So Wendy is a synthetic, and she was originally called Marcy. She was a sick kid who I assume had cancer, terminal cancer, and was given an opportunity by Prodigy to be like, hey, we can put you in a synthetic body, you'll never grow up, and there's a lot of Peter Pan symbolism in that concept as well, which I really like. But the idea is you'll never grow up, you'll be in a synthetic body, and we can make you smarter and stronger. You won't ever get sick, but you also won't be able to feel fear, which is more explored in episode 2. And her story is that she is trying to reconnect with her brother, Joe Hermit, played by Alex Lawther. This is the reason why she decides to send her and the rest of the synthetics off to the crash site that's shown in the beginning of episode 1. I think what's really interesting with the synthetics, though, is that the moment she has the procedure done, it's successful, she is then used as like an example of this being successful for other sick children. But they are still children, you know, mind-like and intelligence-wise and stuff. So it is interesting in that case, but it's also interesting to bring up the idea of, well, you're now in this synthetic body, are you now human? You know, we've switched off the fear, we've switched off, you know, you can't fear now, you shouldn't fear, you're a synthetic, you know, you're not really human anymore. But the discussion of that is brought up a few times, more so in episode 1. It's more direct and not as subtle compared to episode 2. Episode 2 brings up the objectifying, I guess, of these new synthetics, because once they're on that rescue mission, they are just being ordered to be told what to do, like, you do this, you do that, you know, you don't really have an argument against this, you have to do this, you know, you were told to come here, this is what your job is now. So I think that's really interesting, and obviously the discussion of what is human, what is the point where humanity is erased? Like, how far into artificial intelligence, do you get until you are no longer human? And I think that's a really interesting concept. It's been done quite a lot, but obviously this has always been an important factor in the Alien franchise. So I'm glad that it's brought up here as well, and I did think that was really interesting. I think what's also really interesting is the political side of it. So I said I was going to come back to this, but this is a thing that comes up in episode 2 at the beginning. So the space vessel, the research vessel, crashed into a Prodigy building that's owned by Prodigy. But they are a Wayland, I think they're called Wayland Unity. So it's not fully Wayland yet, it hasn't got there yet, because this is early on, before the original film. But there's an interesting conversation at the beginning between the two owners of the companies, where they're like, okay, so Wayland wants to send in a search and rescue team into the building. Prodigy says, well, no, you can't, because it's my building. You caused damage to my building. You can't do that. And we've already sent in a search and rescue team, as well as them basically wanting whatever's on that vessel. However, that's Wayland's ship, so they want what's on it as well. So I think it's really interesting, and obviously that does bring up the complications that would come up with this kind of situation. Staying on episode 2, near the end of the episode, I was quite surprised when, it's another character actually, called Slightly. So all of the synthetics who had been created from the sick children, they're all named after the Lost Boys from Peter Pan. I said that Peter Pan was quite an important symbolism revolving around the synthetics, and this is one of them. All of them are named after the different Lost Boys, after the different characters in Peter Pan. So Slightly accidentally reveals to Joe Hermit that Wendy is actually his sister, who he thought was dead. And I was surprised at how quickly they revealed that, because I thought it was going to take a bit longer to get to that point. But it is hinted at the beginning of episode 2 that Slightly isn't very good at keeping secrets. He's told what Wendy's actual motivation for going to the search and rescue and crash site is. Yeah, he blabs pretty much straight away to the nearest person. So it's already hinted that he's not very good at keeping secrets, and he's the one who reveals to Joe that, oh yeah, Your sister is standing right in front of you and she's in an adult synthetic body. Like, she is alive. Yeah, I was surprised at how quickly that was revealed, because I thought that would probably take a bit longer for that reveal to happen. But I thought it was well done. This is what I mentioned about Ironheart and being quite short, because this is 8 episodes long. So I think it was a tiny bit rushed, but I think they did enough to, like, let that reveal sink in. Like, the way he reacts, he's still quite, shocked at that reveal, even when he follows them to where the xenomorph eggs are. So he's still quite shocked at that. He hasn't quite recovered, being quickly told this information, whereas Wendy has had time to get used to it, so she'll react in a very different way. So I think they did enough to kind of make that believable, but we'll see in the next episode how that goes. I think they do need to come back to that and have a bit more of a discussion about that. There needs to be a few more scenes to let that properly sink in. Yeah, so overall, I really enjoyed the first 2 episodes of AlienEarth. I apologise if this is a bit rambly. My notes are a bit all over the place as well. I'm looking at them on my phone, on my desk. They are a bit all over the place as well, so I do apologise if this is quite messy in its layout, but I tried my best. But overall, I really like this. I think it's done really well with reflecting the tone of the original film, with its cinematography, with its sound and music. The music is there, but it's minimal and only is there when it needs to be. I think the cast and the characters are interesting so far, and the cast is really good. At the moment, it's letting, aside from the reveal that I just mentioned, it's taking its time to tell its story. It knows as a series it can kind of take its time a bit more, which I quite appreciate. I have a question and a theory. So my question is this: how is this going to lead up to the original film? Because at some point it's going to have to, if this is a prequel series set before the original film. And my question is this: I had a theory when watching the first episode that Wendy's DNA was going to be intertwined with a xenomorph's DNA. That is how the procedure was done. They had to have a xenomorph DNA to be able to do this, and that is why there's a research vessel. And maybe Prodigy worked up a deal to do with that, to get the samples from Wayland. So my theory is that Wendy has xenomorph DNA in her. In episode 2, the moment she gets to the crash site, she immediately starts hearing like a weird crackling. It sounds like is it a Geiger meter to test like radioactive levels? It sounds a bit like that, and it's revealed at the end of the episode that the buzzing or the weird crackling sound is from xenomorph eggs that is found at the bottom of the ship. So I do wonder if, because for a while she's the only one that can hear it until near the end when they're actually in that room, and then slightly also hears it, but it's not until that point that happens. So I do wonder if that's the case and where that's going to go. This was my probably very messy review and thoughts on AlienEarth episode 1 and 2. I am going to be doing a weekly discussion / review video on this series on each episode, but this was my thoughts and review on AlienEarth. I was Megan, this is BRWC. See you soon.